Hidden deep in the heart of the Smoky Mountains in Asheville, North Carolina, lies a mansion so grand, so enigmatic, that it seems to hold the secrets of centuries within its walls. Known as the Biltmore Estate, its story has remained shrouded in mystery, with whispers of power, wealth, and untold histories. It is hard to imagine a house, a structure, a piece of land holding so many questions that transcend mere architecture. The Biltmore Estate stands as more than just a home. It is an enigma, a symbol, and a mystery all wrapped into one majestic structure. Nestled in the Ars Blue Ridge Mountains, its towering facade and sprawling grounds offer only a glimpse of the grandeur that lies behind its gates. This estate is as much a reflection of its creator, Vere's George Washington Vanderbilt II, as it is a monument to the Gilded Age itself. But how did this grand creation come to life? How did a man born into one of the wealthiest families in America come to decide that his legacy would not simply be about railroads or steel, but about a mansion that would outlast generations? This is the story of the Biltmore Estate, a story that begins with a question: why here? Why in this remote corner of North Carolina? What was the Vanderbilt legacy? To understand why George Vanderbilt would embark on such an audacious project, we must first understand the legacy of the Vanderbilt family. The Vanderbilts were among the wealthiest families in 19th century America, made famous by heiress Cornelius Vanderbilt, who built the family's fortune in railroads and shipping. By the time George was born in his 1862s, the Vanderbilt name had become synonymous with wealth, power, and industrial might. But for George, the world of railroads and business didn't hold the same allure it did for his family members. Cornelius's empire was built on steam engines, iron tracks, and expanding the rail network across the United States. He was one of the wealthiest men in America, but his fortune came at a cost. The world was changing. Railroads and industry were dominating America, but George's interests lay elsewhere. From a young age, George demonstrated a passion for culture, as literature, and of the arts. He was a man who craved knowledge, not just wealth. By the time he was in his late 20s, George had become a figure apart from his family's railroad empire. He had inherited a massive fortune, but he was far less interested in building upon his family's industrial legacy. Instead, he sought to build something more permanent, something that would reflect his own values, his own aspirations, as legacy, not built on railroads, but on the fusion of culture, nature, and intellectualism. George's upbringing may have afforded him every material possession, but he was not content to live a life of business as usual. His soul yearned for something more meaningful. His need for a retreat, a place where he could pursue his intellectual passions, was not just a desire for his luxury. It was about escape. Escape from the mounting pressures of his family's empire. Escape from the relentless industrialization that was changing the landscape of the country. Escape into the solitude and beauty of nature, where he could develop his own identity. Préfères the mysterious location. But why Asheville, North Carolina? This was not an area that would immediately come to mind as the perfect location for an aristocratic mansion. In the late 1800s, Asheville was a quiet, isolated town, a far cry from the bustling cities that characterized much of the wealthier regions in America. It was situated deep in the heart of the Ars Blue Ridge Mountains, an area known for its natural beauty but also its remoteness. In fact, getting to Asheville from most major cities would take several days. The area lacked the usual infrastructure that people like George Vanderbilt were accustomed to. There were no major highways or railroads connecting it to the outside world. And yet, it was here that George decided to create his grandest retreat. The decision to build in Asheville was deeply personal. George had spent time in the area, and its peaceful setting appealed to him. But the mountains held more than just natural beauty. For Vanderbilt, the land represented something as untamed, a place where he could escape from the pressures of wealth, family, and business. In his 1880s, George purchased over 125,000 acres of land in Asheville, which would eventually become the foundation of the Biltmore Estate. This land wasn't just for a house. It was to be a complete, self-sustaining estate that would include his gardens, as his vineyards, and even his dairy farm. His vision was to create not just a residence, but a world entirely of his own. This estate would reflect his ideals of intellectualism, art, and self-sufficiency. Affairs the mystery of the mansion's purpose. At this point, the questions began to arise. What was the purpose of this massive project? Why so large? Why so isolated? George was not only a member of the wealthiest family in America, but he also had access to the finest architects and designers. Why, then, would he choose to build something so monumental, so removed from the bustling society that his family had helped shape? Some have argued that Biltmore was simply a private retreat, a place where George could escape the pressures of the Vanderbilt empire. But others have suggested that there was more to the story, that the mansion was a symbol of power, a declaration that George Vanderbilt, despite his quiet nature, was not just a passive inheritor of wealth, but someone who would build something lasting and influential in his own right. Indeed, the mystery surrounding Biltmore's creation only deepened as construction began. It became clear that George was not just building a house, he was building a legacy, a structure that would last for generations, a testament to his vision and his values. But what values were these? Why was the mansion built in such a remote location? What was the heir's real purpose behind this massive construction project? Perhaps the answer lies in George's desire for control. In the growing era of industrialization, when America was rapidly shifting from an agricultural economy to an industrial one, George may have felt that he had little control over the world around him. By building Biltmore, he was asserting his own place in history, a place where he could live by his own ideals and create a world that was free from the hustle and bustle of modern life. It was also a retreat from the ever-present demands of the Vanderbilt family legacy. While the rest of his family focused on railroads, shipping, and growing the family fortune, George wanted something different. His mansion, surrounded by mountains and forests, symbolized his desire to retreat from the world of business into a life of contemplation and personal growth. The role of architecture and design. The creation of Biltmore was not just an act of personal desire, it was also a statement about his American architecture and design. George Vanderbilt enlisted one of the finest architects of the time, Richard Morris Hunt, to design the estate. Hunt, known for his grand and elegant designs, was tasked with turning George's vision into reality. The mansion itself was designed to be a French Gothic marvel, with elements of Renaissance revival and Tudor influences. Its Grandest facade, towering spire, and intricate details reflected not just European nobility, but also America's burgeoning aristocracy. The idea behind the design was clear. George Vanderbilt was not simply building a house, he was building a palace. Biltmore wasn't just meant to impress, it was meant to represent. It was to be the physical manifestation of George's own ideals and vision. The mansion would become a symbol of his desire to connect with history, culture, and nature, all while asserting a legacy that would stand apart from the rest of his family. But even as the mansion rose, so did the mystery surrounding it. Was this simply a luxurious residence for a man who had everything, or was there something deeper behind its creation? A message to the world about George Vanderbilt's own place in the shifting landscape of America. The role of secrecy and silences. One of the most curious aspects of Biltmore's construction was the secrecy that surrounded it. While it was no surprise that someone as wealthy as George Vanderbilt could afford such a grand project, it was unusual that the mansion was being built in relative silences. Little was known about the mansion's size, its design, or its purpose until it was nearly complete. In fact, it wasn't until 1895 that the public was able to see the Grand Estate for what it truly was. The secrecy surrounding Biltmore's construction only added to the mystery. People whispered about its purpose, speculated on the meaning behind its grandeur, and questioned why George had chosen such a remote location. The whispers would continue to echo for years to come as the mansion became a place of intrigue, speculation, and fascination. As Biltmore's construction neared completion, it was clear that George Vanderbilt had created more than just a house. He had created a legacy. The mansion was a reflection of his own values and a symbol of his desire to build something lasting. The story of its creation, shrouded in mystery, continues to captivate the world today. The questions surrounding Biltmore's true purpose remain unanswered, but one thing is clear: this grand estate was not just about opulence. It was about something deeper, something personal. The mansion stands as a testament to George Vanderbilt's vision, a monument to a man who sought to build not just a home, but a legacy that would last for centuries to come. To The year 1889 years marked the beginning of what would become one of the most monumental and ambitious architectural projects ever undertaken in the United States. Ours George Washington Vanderbilt II, having already chosen the remote, picturesque location of Asheville, North Carolina, set his mind on creating not just a house, but a living monument, a statement of his vision, ambition, and desire for a legacy that would endure for centuries. He wanted to build something that would transcend time, a sanctuary not just for his family, but for his intellectual and artistic pursuits. Harvey as a monument to vision and legacy. From the very outset, it was clear that a Biltmore would be no ordinary home. Its grandeur and scale were unprecedented for a private residence. But the motivation behind such a massive undertaking went far beyond the desire for luxury. This was a vast monument to Vanderbilt's personal values and to the new era of American wealth and influence. As the 19th century was coming to a close, the Gilded Age was in full swing, and George Vanderbilt, unlike his more business-minded relatives, was determined to create something that symbolized the finer things in life: culture, refinement, and self-sufficiency. Vanderbilt wasn't just building a mansion, he was creating a self-contained estate that would encompass not just the house itself, but the surrounding land. Ma's Biltmore Estate would stand as a testament to his vision of American aristocracy. It would reflect the emerging class of wealthy individuals who were not just industrialists, but also cultural figures who sought to make an impact beyond the world of business and commerce. But such a project was no small feat. To turn this grand vision into a reality, Vanderbilt enlisted the help of some of the most talented minds of his time. The first, and perhaps most important, was Richard Morris Hunt, one of America's most renowned architects. Hunt, who had designed numerous prestigious buildings across the United States, was tasked with bringing George Vanderbilt's dream to life. Richard Morris Hunt's grand design. Hunt's design was ambitious, innovative, and perfectly suited to the scale of George's vision. He didn't just create a house, he created a statement. Biltmore was to be a European-inspired estate with elements drawn from French Gothic, Renaissance Revival, and Tudor architectural styles. The mansion would be a tribute to the great palaces and castles of Europe, but with distinctly American sensibilities. The mansion would include more than 250 rooms, including 35 bedrooms, 43 bathrooms, 65 fireplaces, and 3 kitchens, more than enough to accommodate George Vanderbilt, his wife Edith Stuyvesant Dresser, and their guests. At the time, no American home had ever been designed on such a grand scale. This would be the largest privately owned house in America, a 125,000 square feet of space, spread over 4 stories and featuring an impressive French Gothic facade, soaring towers, and an intricate roofline designed to evoke the Grand Châteaux of France. Hunt's design also placed a significant emphasis on the interior. The mansion's rooms were designed with a great deal of care and thought, with a variety of architectural styles and luxurious details. The Grand Ballroom, for instance, was designed to accommodate large social gatherings, while rooms like the Czar Library and the Czar Drawing Room reflected George's deep intellectual interests. These spaces were not just meant to impress, they were meant to reflect the sophisticated, cultured world that Vanderbilt sought to create. But the mansion was not only about the physical building itself. It was designed to function as an integrated estate, a fully self-sustaining property that would include gardens, orchards, vineyards, dairy farms, and more. The estate was intended to produce much of the food and goods needed by the household, from vegetables to meat to milk. For Vanderbilt, this self-sufficiency was important. It was a vision that tied into his desire for a retreat from the industrialized world, a sanctuary where he could live a life of comfort, culture, and autonomy. Faffy was the logistics of building Biltmores. With a vision in place and the architect hired, the construction of Biltmore began. But the logistics of building such a massive structure, especially in such a remote location, were incredibly challenging. Unlike major urban centers where construction could draw from a large labor pool, the site for Biltmore was isolated and difficult to access. The first challenge was transportation. Asheville was not a hub of major infrastructure in the 1880s. Roads were narrow and unpaved, and the nearest railroad was miles away. Materials, from bricks to stone to timber, had to be transported long distances. Over 1,000 workers were employed to build the estate, many of whom were skilled craftsmen brought in from around the country. Some workers lived on site for years, and the labor force grew steadily as the scale of the project expanded. One of the key materials used in the construction of the mansion was Erzur's local sandstone, which was quarried on site. This not only helped blend the mansion into the natural surroundings, but it also gave the estate a timeless feel, one that seemed to grow organically out of the mountain itself. The use of a stone was also in keeping with the grand European estates that had inspired George Vanderbilt's vision. The mansion's layout was designed to be both was functional and das aesthetic. The house would feature an expansive as entrance hall, a das library with thousands of books, and a Zahler's banquet hall designed to host grand social events. In total, the mansion would have more than 100 rooms on the main floor, with large spaces for dining, socializing, and relaxing. The grand staircase would serve as the centerpiece of the home, designed to leave guests awestruck upon their arrival. Quaqua's land and grounds, a self-sustaining utopia. In addition to the mansion itself, Vanderbilt's vision for Biltmore included the surrounding land, over 8,000 acres in total. This land would serve not only as a scenic backdrop to the mansion, but also as a fast-working estate. The estate was designed to be self-sufficient, with farming, forestry, and livestock all playing a vital role in the daily operation of the property. The gardens were designed by Frederick Olmsted, one of America's most celebrated landscape architects. Olmsted had previously designed a Central Park in New York, and his approach to landscaping was deeply rooted in the idea of natural beauty and harmony. The grounds at Biltmore reflected this philosophy, with sprawling gardens, tree-lined avenues, and carefully designed flower beds. Olmsted also designed a walled garden, an area for fruits and vegetables, and an ag's forest for hunting, all intended to serve the mansion's daily needs. But Vanderbilt's vision for the estate went beyond mere aesthetics. The land was meant to be a symbol of his ideals, a testament to the self-sufficiency of the American aristocrat. The estate would provide everything George Vanderbilt needed, from food to fuel, without depending on outside sources. This would be a place where he could truly escape the fast-paced world of industry and commerce and live on his own terms. Raffier's challenges and triumphs of construction. As the construction of Biltmore continued over the next 6 years, it became clear that George Vanderbilt was not just building a house, he was creating a work of art. The scale and complexity of the project pushed the limits of what was possible at the time. Many of the workers on site had never seen anything like it, and the scale of the work often seemed insurmountable. But despite these challenges, Biltmore continued to take shape. The project's grand scope and the complexity of its design meant that the estate would require constant adjustments and improvements. Several rooms were redesigned and expanded, while the landscaping around the property required careful management to ensure that everything grew as planned. Even the interior decor was carefully chosen, with pieces brought in from all over the world. The result was a mansion that not only dazzled with its architecture, but also stunned with its luxury. And so, after nearly 6 years of intense labor, the Biltmore Estate was completed in 1895, standing as a beacon of wealth culture and intellectualism in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was a monument not just to George Vanderbilt's wealth, but to his vision of the American aristocracy, one that valued not just industry, but the finer things in life. Biltmore Estate, from its very conception, was never intended to be a mere house. It was his vision, his monument, and his legacy. As the mansion rose from the mountains, it became clear that this project was about far more than just comfort and luxury. It was about creating something that would transcend time and place, a creation that would reflect George Vanderbilt's values of culture, intellect, and self-sufficiency. But as construction came to a close, the questions remained: how would this grand monument to one man's vision affect the world around it? And what legacy would Biltmore truly leave behind? In the year 1895, Biltmore Estate was completed. After years of meticulous planning, the finest craftsmanship, and unwavering vision, the mansion stood as a living testament to the wealth, intellect, and ambition of George Washington Vanderbilt II. The estate was no longer just a construction project. It had become his home, a home that would eventually be inhabited by one of the most prominent families in American history. But what were the early days of Biltmore like? How did it evolve from a grand structure into a living, breathing space, and what role did the E.S. Vanderbilts play in shaping the estate's identity? Biltmore was not simply built to be a private residence, it was designed to be as an experience. The early days of the estate were filled with wonder, transformation, and a continuous evolution that would define its place in American history. From the first day the doors of Biltmore opened, it was clear that this would be a place of art and Charles's intellectualism. George Vanderbilt's vision was far greater than a mere mansion. Biltmore was an emblem of his desire to create a legacy that would define not just his life but the future of his family, his estate, and even his country. As the first inhabitants, the first people to inhabit Biltmore were George Vanderbilt and his wife Edith Stuyvesant, whom he married in 1898. While their lives would be intertwined with the legacy of the estate, they were far from ordinary occupants. Their lives were marked by a blend of intellectual pursuits, social sophistication, and a desire to create a sanctuary away from the distractions of the outside world. George Vanderbilt, a man deeply rooted in intellectualism, had no desire to simply live in a mansion. He wanted to live within it. He didn't see the mansion as a place to escape to, but as a place to immerse himself in the pursuit of knowledge, art, and culture. Together with Edith, they transformed the estate into more than just a home. They shaped it into a cultural epicenter. As they settled into the mansion, they continued the tradition of the Gilded Age by hosting extravagant social gatherings, grand dinners, and intellectual discussions. The first guests to visit the estate were invited to experience the epitome of its luxury, opulence, and refinement. It wasn't just the elegance of the house that astounded visitors. It was the atmosphere of sophistication that permeated every aspect of the estate. But it was not just the physical space that was being crafted. George and Edith worked together to create a culture around Biltmore that would distinguish it from the wealth-driven society of the time. For George, the estate was about more than socializing. It was about immersing himself in a world of learning and culture. He was known for hosting scholarly guests, artists, writers, philosophers, and political figures. His library, one of the most impressive features of the house, housed thousands of books, with shelves extending into every corner. It was a place where ideas could flow freely, where the mind could wander, and where guests could find inspiration and knowledge. In this way, Biltmore quickly became more than just a grand estate. It became R's cultural hub. R's intellectualism and creativity were integral parts of daily life. It was a place where not just wealth was celebrated, but also the pursuit of higher ideals. It was also a space of intellectual stimulation, where some of the brightest minds of the time could gather. The role of Edith Vanderbilt. While George was undoubtedly the driving force behind the vision of the estate, Edith played a significant role in its daily life. As the lady of the house, she transformed Biltmore into R's home in the truest sense of the word. Edith was not merely a passive figure in George's life. She was actively involved in the management of the estate, its social life, and its operations. She was known for her grace and refinement, and was a perfect complement to George's intellectual pursuits. Edith was instrumental in turning the mansion into a place of both comfort and elegancy. She helped design the interior of Biltmore, carefully choosing furnishings and paintings, decorative accents that would lend the home an air of sophistication and European refinement. The design of the estate was meant to be a reflection of their shared vision, a place where both R's luxury and R's art coexisted in perfect harmony. But Edith also had a hand in transforming the land around the estate. Together with George, she managed the agricultural aspects of Biltmore. The estate was not just a mansion. It was an integrated, self-sustaining property, and its design was meant to reflect this. Edith was a part of the effort to grow the estates as vineyards, as orchards, and gardens, making sure that the estate's natural beauty and productivity worked in tandem with the mansion's grandeur. In addition to her work on the estate, Edith was a passionate philanthropist. She worked tirelessly to support causes related to women's rights, education, and the arts. She also supported the estate's community through charitable initiatives, ensuring that the surrounding area benefited from the prosperity that Biltmore generated. Under her stewardship, Biltmore was not just a house of wealth, it was a house of influence. Fafi hers the early years parties, guests, and the Gilded Age elite. With its grandeur and sophistication, Biltmore quickly became the social center of the Gilded Age's elite. The Vanderbilts entertained a vast array of prominent figures, from industrialists to politicians, artists, writers, and cultural figures. The estate's social calendar was filled with grand dinners, parties, and galas. Every room in the mansion was meticulously prepared to host visitors, and the house was designed to be a place for us, both comfort and away. Biltmore's banquet hall was the site of many extravagant gatherings. This room alone was an architectural feat, designed to seat up to 250 guests for grand events. The ballroom, equally impressive, saw its fair share of his dance parties and social affairs. The estate became known not only for its beauty, but also for its ability to bring together some of the most important people of the day. Among the notable guests that visited Biltmore during its early years were political figures such as Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th President of the United States, and Teddy Roosevelt, who would become one of the most famous American presidents in history. Other cultural icons, including artists, writers, and musicians, were also frequent visitors. These gatherings were not just social, they were cultural milestones, where ideas were exchanged, art was discussed, and American aristocracy came together to shape the future. At Biltmore as a symbol of wealth and power. The early years of Biltmore were marked by the presence of its influential owners. The estate stood not just as a home, but as a symbol of power and prestige. It represented the height of American aristocracy, a time when wealth was equated with influence, culture, and intellect. For George and Edith, it was not just about living in luxury, it was about embodying a vision. Their home was meant to serve as an example of what the American elite could achieve when wealth and intellect were combined. At the same time, however, Biltmore's early years were marked by the challenges of maintaining such an enormous estate. While the Vanderbilts lived in luxury, they also faced the constant responsibility of managing a property of such magnitude. The estate had to be carefully maintained, the grounds kept in order, and the social calendar filled with events that would continue to uphold the family's reputation. But despite these challenges, Biltmore was always a place of transcendent beauty and devised influences. It was a place where the ideals of the Gilded Age, wealth, power, and intellectualism were celebrated. It was a place that embodied the dreams and ambitions of George and Edith Vanderbilt and would continue to serve as a beacon of American aristocracy for generations to come, forever the beginning of a lasting legacy. As the first years of Biltmore's existence unfolded, it became clear that the mansion was more than just a house, it was a legacy. It would stand for many things: wealth, culture, intellect, and artistic achievement. But most importantly, it would come to symbolize the Vanderbilts themselves, their ambitions, their passions, and their desire to create something timeless. The early days of Biltmore were not simply about creating a luxurious home. They were about establishing a place where ideas, culture, and wealth could all come together. And from the moment George and Edith moved into the mansion, Biltmore began its long journey to becoming a symbol of American history. It would be a legacy that would endure for generations to come. When most people think of the Biltmore Estate, their minds are immediately drawn to its vastness, the sprawling gardens, the towering facade, and the incredible wealth that must have been poured into its construction. But there is another side to the estate that often goes unnoticed: the meticulous attention to detail in its design and architecture. The mansion wasn't just meant to be grand, it was meant to be a reflection of the Vanderbilts' ideals, combining elegance, luxury, and functionality into a living, breathing space that would stand as a monument to their legacy. When George Washington Vanderbilt II envisioned Biltmore, he didn't simply imagine a lavish home for himself and his family. He wanted to create immersive experiences, one that encapsulated the essence of luxury as his comfort and his refinement. He wasn't just building a house, he was crafting palaces that would become synonymous with the highest standards of American aristocracy. And it's in the details, from the layout of the rooms to the hand-carved woodwork, that Biltmore reveals itself to be much more than just a mansion. It is, in essence, a work of art. Fenger's vision brought to life by Richard Morris Hunt. To bring this vision to life, George Vanderbilt turned to Richard Morris Hunt, one of the most celebrated American architects of the time. Hunt was no stranger to grandeur, having already designed iconic structures like the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. But Biltmore was something unique, something beyond the typical aspirations of the age. Hunt understood that the mansion needed to reflect the values of George Vanderbilt, values of Oz culture, Oz knowledge, and Oz refinement. Hunt's design for Biltmore was a stunning mix of architectural styles, as French Gothic as Renaissance Revival and as Tudor, that fused the best of as European nobility with the emerging as American aristocracy. The mansion's architecture didn't just stand as a symbol of wealth, it embodied the aspirations of the Gilded Age's elite. Biltmore was meant to be a timeless structure, one that would stand as an enduring reminder of the vision that George Vanderbilt had for the future. Is the layout a masterpiece of design. At its core, Biltmore's layout was designed to reflect the rear's luxurious lifestyle of the Vanderbilts. It wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of how American aristocracy should live. With more than 250 rooms spread across 4 stories, Biltmore was a monumental structure, the largest privately owned home in the United States. But it wasn't just the sheer size that left people in awe. It was the way the space was thoughtfully divided, with each room serving a distinct purpose. The entrance halls, for example, is perhaps one of the most stunning elements of the mansion. Standing at an impressive 70 feet high, it immediately conveys the grandeur of the estate. The hall is adorned with intricately detailed Vara's wood paneling and features Vara's stained glass windows that bathe the space in natural light. The grand staircase, also a central feature of the entrance, ascends to the upper floors, where the private family quarters are located. From the moment guests enter, they are met with a sense of awe and wonder, a fitting introduction to the luxurious home they've entered. Beyond the entrance hall, the layout includes everything from R's formal dining rooms to R's private libraries, all designed with an eye for both beauty and functionality. The R's banquet hall, where George and Edith Vanderbilt hosted some of the most lavish social gatherings of the time, was designed to accommodate up to 250 guests. Its Gothic arches. There's high vaulted ceilings and elaborate chandeliers create a space that is both magnificent and intimate. The grand dining table, which could seat dozens, was the centerpiece of these gatherings, where guests dined on the finest food and wine, surrounded by the splendor of the mansion. But it wasn't all just about the showpiece rooms. The private quarters of the Vanderbilt family were equally impressive, albeit more reserved. Their library, with its thousands of books, was a reflection of George's intellectual pursuits. Edith's private rooms, meanwhile, reflected her elegance and refinement, with soft, muted colors and furniture that echoed the same sense of European sophistication found in the grander spaces of the estate. Fafier's architectural features a blend of styles. The architectural design of Biltmore is a rich tapestry of historical influences, each room telling its own story. The exterior of the mansion, inspired by French Gothic architecture, was designed to appear both as imposing and as elegant, with a blend of steeply pitched roofs as twin towers and ornate stonework. The facade of Biltmore resembles something straight out of a medieval European palace, with pointed arches and intricate stone carvings that give it a sense of grandeur. The mansion's Gothic windows allow natural light to flood the interiors, giving each room an ethereal quality that enhances the feeling of opulence. From the Uller's stone balustrades to the Uller's gilded fixtures in the drawing rooms, Biltmore exudes wealth and sophistication at every turn. One of the most impressive aspects of Biltmore's design is its careful attention to its functional elegancy. The mansion was built with the intention that every space, whether it was a grand ballroom or a private study, would feel both comfortable and majestic. The layout ensured that the home was both a space for intellectual pursuits and a venue for social interaction. It was a home that reflected George Vanderbilt's love for books, art, and culture, while also serving as the perfect setting for the elite gatherings that he and his wife hosted. The mansion's Dozer libraries, for instance, is a perfect example of this balance between formality and comfort. It is a room filled with tall wooden bookshelves and adorned with fine carvings. that evoke a sense of timeless knowledge. The room was intended to be a sanctuary for George, a place where he could retreat from the busy social calendar of the estate and immerse himself in his favorite books. But it was also a place to entertain as intellectual guests, who could discuss literature, philosophy, and politics. Fingers here the interior design a reflection of Tasty. Inside Biltmore, the interior design further accentuates the mansion's theme of dozen refinements and its luxury. Each room was carefully designed to reflect the personal tastes of the Vanderbilt family. This drawing room, for example, was a space of soft, elegant tones, with plush as velvet sofas with silk curtains, and gilded furniture that spoke to the opulence of the Gilded Age. The walls were adorned with oil paintings, exquisite tapestries that added to the air's charm and grandeurs of the home. The Biltmore kitchen, which was one of the largest and most technologically advanced kitchens of its time, was another example of the estate's sophisticated design. It was fitted with the latest cooking equipment and designed to efficiently handle the vast quantities of food needed to feed the estate's numerous guests. While kitchens today are often hidden away from sight, Biltmore's kitchen was a focal point of its design, an open, airy space that reflected the importance of food and hospitality in the Vanderbilt lifestyle. Even the restrooms, while often overlooked in other estates, were designed with luxurious touches. The marble tiles as gold fixtures and finely crafted bathtubs were symbolic of the extent to which George Vanderbilt wanted every aspect of the estate to embody his heir's luxury. No detail was too small or too insignificant in the pursuit of perfection. The garden's nature and architecture in harmony. While the mansion itself was a marvel of design, it was the surrounding gardens that added another layer to Biltmore's grandeur. Designed by Frederick Olmsted, the same landscape architect who designed Central Park in New York, Biltmore's gardens were meant to reflect the natural beauty of the surrounding Blue Ridge Mountains. Olmsted carefully designed the gardens to blend seamlessly with the estate's architecture, creating a space where nature and design coexisted in perfect harmony. The gardens at Biltmore are vast, covering over 75 acres of land. They include formal gardens, expansive lawns, and tranquil forested areas. The Swalled Garden, in particular, is a breathtaking feature, with its vibrant flower beds and stunning views of the estate. It's here, among the roses and hydrangeas, that the true spirit of Biltmore comes to life, where Sarah's nature and ours luxury merge to create an unforgettable experience for visitors and inhabitants alike. While the mansions itself stands as a testament to the wealth, vision, and artistry of George Washington Vanderbilt II, the gardens, grounds surrounding the estate are equally extraordinary. Designed not only to complement the grand architecture, but also to reflect the ideals of natural beauty, self-sufficiency, and elegance, the grounds of the Biltmore Estate are a seamless extension of the mansion. Together, they form a complete environment that captivates every sense, blending architecture and nature into one cohesive masterpiece. Biltmore is not just a private residence, it is an estate sprawling over 8,000 acres of pristine land, including extensive forests, rolling hills, and meticulously designed gardens. The grounds were meant to be an integral part of George Vanderbilt's vision of self-sufficiency, and they serve as a living, breathing part of the mansion's legacy. The landscaping of Biltmore is the product of the vision of Frederick Olmsted, the legendary landscape architect behind New York's Central Park. Olmsted was not just an architect, he was a philosopher of landscaping. His designs were about more than simply creating beautiful spaces. They were about creating environments that made people feel both as connected to nature and as elevated by the surroundings. For Biltmore, Olmsted sought to craft an environment that would provide both ear's aesthetic pleasure and air's practical function, blending natural elements with the grandeur of the estate's architecture. The vision of Frederick Olmsted, who was also instrumental in the design of Stanford University, the U.S. Capitol grounds, and Mount Royal Park in Montreal, was tasked with transforming the Biltmore Estate into something that would rival the finest gardens and parks in the world. His designs were based on the principles of naturalism, which emphasized a harmonious blending of architecture with the landscape. The result is a series of gardens that flow seamlessly into the natural surroundings of the estate, enhancing the beauty of the mansion while also providing its residents with peaceful retreats. The grounds of Biltmore Estate are a patchwork of diverse landscapes, from the formal gardens that surround the mansion to the more rugged and natural azure forests, and outdoors meadows that stretch into the Blue Ridge Mountains. These varied landscapes reflect Vanderbilt's vision of self-sufficiency, as well as his desire to create a sanctuary that would blend a vast nature with vast refinement. Is the walled garden a hidden oasis? One of the most remarkable features of the Biltmore Gardens is the walled garden, a secluded oasis designed to be a place of calm and beauty. The garden is enclosed by a high stone wall, ensuring privacy and creating a sense of intimacy. Inside, the garden is a riot of color and texture, with flower beds filled with a mix of roses, hydrangeas, and daisies, a visual spectacle that changes with the seasons. The walled garden was not just a place to admire the flowers, but also a practical space, as it included vegetable and herb gardens that were used to supply fresh produce to the mansion. In addition to the flowers and plants, the garden also contains a series of fountains and small ponds designed to create a peaceful atmosphere. The sound of water trickling over rocks, combined with the fragrance of the flowers and the vibrant colors, transforms the walled garden into a space where one can truly connect with nature. The garden's layout was designed to feel natural, with winding paths that lead visitors on a journey through its diverse sections. This sense of discovery mirrors Olmsted's approach to landscaping, creating spaces that invite exploration and contemplation. Pontifies the Italian garden elegance and serenity. Located just below the mansion, the Italian garden is another stunning feature of Biltmore's landscape. Designed to evoke the elegance and beauty of Renaissance Italy, the garden is characterized by symmetry as formal pathways and as manicured hedges. At its center is a large reflecting pool, which mirrors the architecture of the mansion above, creating a stunning visual connection between the house and its grounds. The Italian garden is divided into several sections, each with its own unique character. The formal flower beds, with their geometric shapes and vibrant colors, contrast beautifully with the more relaxed, natural style of the surrounding landscape. The garden is also home to several sculptures and statues, which were carefully selected to enhance the beauty of the space. But the Italian garden is not just about beauty, it's also about function. In the early years of the estate, this garden was used to grow fruit trees, vegetables, and herbs, all of which were used in the mansion's kitchens. The careful blending of aesthetic design with practicality reflects George Vanderbilt's vision for a self-sufficient estate, where the land could provide for its residents and guests. The Rose Garden, a celebration of color and scent, just to the south of the mansion. The Rose Garden is one of the most striking and fragrant areas of the estate. Home to over 200 varieties of roses, the garden bursts into color every spring and summer, creating a sensory experience that delights visitors. The roses, which range from a vibrant red to delicate whites and pale pinks, are carefully arranged in symmetrical flower beds, each carefully curated to create a harmonious visual effect. The Rose Garden is one of the best examples of the formal garden style that was so popular during the Gilded Age. Designed with straight lines, defined spaces, and geometric shapes, the garden creates an orderly, almost architectural feel. Yet, the lushness of the roses softens the rigid lines, offering a more natural contrast to the formality of the design. The perfumed air in the Rose Garden is intoxicating, and it's easy to imagine George and Edith Vanderbilt walking through the pathways, admiring the roses while enjoying the quiet beauty of the space. Emburs the walled garden's practicality, fruits, vegetables, and herbs. The walled garden was not only a place of beauty, but also a practical space designed to provide food for the estate. The garden was used to grow everything from tomatoes and lettuces to potatoes and carrots. There were also herb gardens, where lavender and sage and other herbs were cultivated. The garden's design reflected this practical purpose, with clearly defined areas for different types of crops. This focus on self-sufficiency was an essential part of the Vanderbilt family's vision for Biltmore. By creating an estate that could produce much of its own food, George Vanderbilt ensured that Biltmore would not only be a place of luxury and beauty, but also a sustainable and functional estate. Fakar's the conservatory, a place for exotic plants. A cast conservatory at Biltmore is another important feature of the estate's gardens. Built to house as exotic plants from around the world, the conservatory was designed as a place where, as tropical plants, could flourish in the temperate climate of North Carolina. It houses a grass-wide variety of plants, from aceres palm trees to orchids, as well as numerous climbing vinous ferns and cacti. And the glass walls and high ceilings create a high sun-drenched space where visitors can explore a rich diversity of plant life, all while escaping the changing seasons outside. The conservatory's design is reflective of George Vanderbilt's desire to create a space of beauty and tranquility, where his guests could connect with nature in a controlled, protected environment. It was also a way to show off his global travels and the exotic plants that had fascinated him during his life. Fakar's a garden for all seasons. As the seasons change, so too does the landscape of Biltmore Estate. The gardens and grounds are constantly evolving, with each season bringing its own unique beauty. Spring brings the arrival of the roses and tulips, while summer sees the gardens bursting with color. Autumn brings the changing of the leaves, turning the estate into a riot of reds, oranges, and yellows. And in winter, the estate takes on a quiet, peaceful elegance, with the bare branches of the trees creating a stark but beautiful contrast against their snow-covered landscape. No matter the season, the gardens at Biltmore remain a place of wonder, where guests can stroll through winding pathways, admire the diverse flora, and enjoy the peaceful atmosphere that has been crafted with such care and thought. The gardens and grounds surrounding our Biltmore Estate are not just a backdrop to the mansion. They are an integral part of the estate's identity. Designed by Frederick Olmsted, these gardens reflect George Vanderbilt's vision of combining luxury with a self-sufficiency, creating an environment that was both beautiful and practical. From the Oswald Garden to, as the years passed, the Biltmore Estate became more than just the mansion gardens and grounds that George Washington Vanderbilt had meticulously crafted. It evolved into a living legacy, one that would carry the aspirations, values, and vision of the Vanderbilt family long after George's passing. Today, Biltmore stands as a monument to both its creator and the generations that followed, leaving an indelible mark on the cultural, architectural, and social history of the United States. But the story of Biltmore's legacy is not just about its monumental construction or the grandeur of its architecture. It's about the role the estate has played in shaping the landscape of American tourism, preservation, and as innovation. From the early 20th century to the present day, Biltmore has served as both a symbol of the Gilded Ages and a beacon for future generations seeking to understand the complexities of wealth, culture, and history in America. The passing of George Vanderbilt and the preservation of Biltmore. When George Washington Vanderbilt II passed away in 1914 at the age of 51, his death marked the end of an era for the estate. He had spent the last 2 decades of his life meticulously curating Biltmore, not just as a home, but as a symbol of wealth and refinement. His untimely passing left the estate in the hands of his wife, Edith Vanderbilt, and his only daughter, Cornelia Vanderbilt. But Biltmore would soon face its greatest challenge, maintaining its grandeur while navigating the changing social and economic tides of the early 20th century. In the years that followed George's death, Edith and Cornelia worked tirelessly to keep the estate in the family. But the estate faced mounting financial pressures during the Great Depression of the 1930s, at a time when many grand estates were being lost to the economic downturn. Thus, Biltmore became one of the few large American estates to survive largely intact. This was due in part to Cornelia Vanderbilt Cecil's decision to open the estate to the public in 1930, a pioneering move that helped maintain the property's financial viability during a time of uncertainty. Fife's Biltmore as a commercial and cultural icon. The opening of Biltmore to the public marked a significant shift in the estate's history. No longer just a private residence, Biltmore began to evolve into commercial entities, offering the public a chance to experience the luxury and grandeur of a bygone era. The mansion's rooms, gardens, and grounds became a backdrop for tourism, and the estate quickly became one of the most popular tourist destinations in the United States. Biltmore's role as a cultural and commercial institution continued to grow throughout the 20th century. In the 1970s, the estate was recognized as a National Historic Landmark, and efforts to preserve the mansion and its grounds were intensified. In the following decades, the estate underwent a series of restorations and enhancements, ensuring that its rich history would be preserved for future generations to enjoy. Biltmore's impact on tourism. One of the most significant aspects of Biltmore's legacy is its contribution to the development of American tourism. Long before the rise of national parks and modern tourist destinations, Biltmore Estate stood as an early example of how the Oz privately owned historic home could serve as a public attraction. By welcoming visitors into the heart of the mansion, Biltmore set a precedent for the future of historical tourism. Tourists from around the world flocked to Biltmore to see firsthand the Ezra's extravagances of the mansion and to walk through the Ezra Immaculate Gardens. The estate became a symbol not just of his wealth, but of our American history, providing a tangible connection to the Gilded Age and to the legacy of the Vanderbilts. As one of the largest privately owned estates in the country, Biltmore offered visitors a rare glimpse into the world of the American elite and the ideals that shaped their lives. The estate's immense popularity helped foster a broader appreciation for the preservation of those historic homes and thus public access to estates that were once reserved for the elite. Biltmore was not only a site of War's touristic interest, but also a catalyst for the growth of War's heritage tourism in the United States. It helped lay the groundwork for the preservation and maintenance of other historically significant properties, ultimately contributing to the growth of the cultural tourism industry in America. The Biltmore Estate and environmental stewardship. While Biltmore's legacy is deeply tied to its architecture, art, and culture, it is equally important for its role in environmental stewardship and as conservation. As George Vanderbilt's original vision for the estate was not just to create a beautiful home, but to cultivate a self-sustaining environment, a vision that extended to the land itself. The estates forest gardens and agricultural operations were all designed with an emphasis on sustainability and self-sufficiency. Today, Biltmore Estate continues to serve as a leader in conservation and environmental sustainability. The estate's grounds are managed with a focus on preserving its fauna's natural beauty and promoting biodiversity. Biltmore operates an eco-friendly farming operation, producing a wide variety of sustainable products, from wines grown in the estate's vineyards to food produced in its gardens. In addition to its farming efforts, the estate is also dedicated to preserving its surrounding Ezra's forests and Ezra's wildlife habitats. The estate is home to several species of native plants and animals, and ongoing conservation initiatives are focused on maintaining the ecological balance of the land. These efforts reflect the values that George Vanderbilt instilled in the estate, ensuring that Biltmore remains a model of environmental stewardship for generations to come. Is the Biltmore legacy in popular culture. Biltmore's influence extends far beyond the world of tourism and historical preservation. Over the years, the estate has become an icon in American popular culture, appearing in numerous films, television shows, and books. Its grand architecture and lush gardens have made it a popular backdrop for filmmakers and photographers seeking to capture the opulence of the Gilded Age. One of the most notable depictions of Biltmore in popular culture came in the form of the Biltmore Estate's inclusion in the 1999 film The Last Castle, starring as Robert Redford and as James Gandolfini. The mansion's grandeur and impressive interiors served as the perfect setting for the film's story of military discipline, honor, and power. Biltmore's imposing architecture made it the perfect place to explore themes of legacy, control, and transformation, subjects that align perfectly with the history of the estate itself. Biltmore's role in preservation and education. In addition to its tourism and cultural impact, Biltmore also plays a significant role in historical education and preservation. The estate serves as a living museum, offering visitors a chance to learn about the history of the Vanderbilt family, the first Gilded Ages, and the social dynamics that defined that era. Educational programs, exhibits, and guided tours provide context to the architecture, history, and cultural significance of the estate, enriching visitors' understanding of the period. The Biltmore Estate Foundation, which supports the estate's ongoing restoration and educational initiatives, is committed to preserving the property's historical integrity. The foundation works to ensure that future generations will continue to experience Biltmore in its full splendor, while also fostering an appreciation for the estate's historical significance. 5 of Biltmore's enduring legacy. Today, the legacy of as Biltmore Estate continues to thrive, largely due to the tireless efforts of its owners and the community around it. The estate remains a Zekker's living testament to the dreams and aspirations of a George Vanderbilt II, a man who in the late 19th century sought to create a legacy of refinement, intellectualism, and beauty. From its architecture to its gardens, its historical significance to its role in modern-day tourism and conservation, Biltmore has endured as one of the most iconic and celebrated estates in American history. Its story is far from over. With each passing year, Biltmore continues to inspire new generations to connect with history, to appreciate the beauty of architecture, and to understand the values of sustainability and preservation. It stands not just as a symbol of the past, but as a beacon for the future, a reminder of the timeless ideals that George Vanderbilt sought to bring to life through his creation, and a legacy that will continue to evolve for generations to come. 2. The legacy of our Biltmore Estate is both ours, rich and enduring, touching on aspects of history, culture, and nature that resonate even today. Through its role in tourism, conservation, and historical education, Biltmore has become more than just a mansion. It has become an integral part